I noticed as I was continuing my research with Meshuggah is that over the last few years, their light shows have sort of gotten really intense. And in the sense that the lights are exactly following the music rhythmically, and then also interpreting the gestures and contours of the music as well, with different parts highlighted through the lighting. And then, when a section repeats, the same lighting will come back or similar lighting will come back to show you that repetition is happening. And I think it's particularly interesting in the context of Meshuggah because they're on the one hand known as this band with really complicated rhythms, but then they have a sort of broad audience that goes way beyond people who are musically educated and specifically listening for those rhythms, right? They have this sort of, this like rock band mentality. And so on the one hand, the lighting provides this really sophisticated interpretation of everything that's going on in the music, but it also provides like a visual guide to everything that's happening that's completely accessible in a way that notation and traditional music theory is not. Yeah, it creates a sort of what I call a vernacular music theory that isn't based on notation, but is based on a lot of the things that music theory is based on, which is close listening and expert knowledge of what's going on in the music.
Yeah. How do you go about studying these light shows? What is your strategy for?
Well, I got in touch with Meshuggah's lighting designer, this guy named Edvard Hansen.
Edvard. Yeah.
And he very kindly gave me a lengthy interview in which he told me about his process, both the creative side and the technical side. And he also gave me a bunch of videos because he videos all the shows, so that he can watch his own work and keep working on it, keep improving it. And so then I'll do my transcription of the music and then sort of align it with the video of the lights. And so what I ended up doing is I sort of ended up separating how the lighting is done into two different categories. And so I looked at those two categories as, on the one hand, elements of the lighting that are doing something small and local, right? So within a single riff pattern, it might show the difference between a single string section and a power chord section, right? Meshuggah has a lot of riffs that sort of combine those two elements. And so the lighting will like play up that contrast. And then the other category would be ways that the lighting shows larger structural elements across a whole song. And so then, I just find interesting passages in the lights and in the music and see what he's doing there. And one of the things that I find really interesting is the extent to which the lighting designer is then giving power to sort of interpret the music and almost tell the audience exactly what to listen to and how to listen to it. Because the sort of the cognitive research behind all this, which is something that I'm not personally an expert in, but I know some people who do this work, shows that the visual cues will change what you hear.
Oh yeah, the McGurk effect, right?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, I just know this. It's an interesting experiment where you have a person on video saying either V or F, I think, like that. And depending on the way they mouth move, it changes the way you perceive the sound. So you're actually getting your cue from the way the person's mouth moves and not what the phoneme they're actually saying.
Right, and the deaf percussionist Evelyn Glennie?
No.
So it's fascinating. She was born deaf, profoundly deaf since birth. But she speaks with a strong Scottish accent because she's Scottish, right? And she.
Oh yeah, you mentioned her in your thesis. Yeah.
Yes,
I know
she's
who
really
you're talking
amazing.
About.
And she has this cool TED talk, and where she talks about her work as a percussionist, and also you get to hear her fantastic Scottish accent. But yeah, and also like a brighter light will make a sound louder for you. So by the way Hansen is doing the things he's doing, he's actually changing the way the audience hears the music to some extent.
Yeah. Would it fair to say that he is kind of nerdifying the headbangers in the first row just talking about your auto-ethnography that you mentioned at the beginning, where there is you kind of divide the crowd into nerds on the balcony that are counting out every rhythm, and just people that are just crowd killing in the pit.
I think
so in a sense,
I think he's really like bringing the two closer together.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, he's done the nerdy work of figuring out every beat of the music and then putting it into the lights. But he also creates this really accessible interpretation that's there for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's like both a performance and an analysis at the same time.
Yeah, it seems to, just from an outsider perspective, it seems to take more and more space in their music. Just watching the music video of Clockworks that was made by a fractal artist, and actually you can see the light flashing, following the rhythm of whatever, because the video is divided through different instrumentalists, and you can see the video flashing, following the rhythm of what they are playing. And it also seems to me like gen bands in general, myself included actually, are incorporating this light show thing more and more, and I tend to see it in more and more in music shows.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's because it's easier now to have fancier lights, or I mean, in Meshuggah's case, they can afford to hire someone to like go on tour with them full time and do all this, but
it's also maybe related to, I feel like a lot of Meshuggah is a lot of what they do is related to the evolution of technology. And for example, that really started, I might be wrong there, I don't really know, but it seems to me that might have started when they started playing to click tracks, because it's much before, I don't know if it was the same light engineer, but I know he was playing everything by hand, which was absolutely crazy to see, but he doesn't have as many possibilities doing that probably as he has using advanced software to program the lights.
Yeah, so that lighting designer's been with them since 2011, and when he started, he was doing it by hand, and that's why there's like all those videos of him on YouTube playing everything by hand, and it's like in time with the music and stuff. But the reason he automated it is because he didn't want people taking videos of him. He wanted the audience like focused on the band.
Yeah.
So he's like, I don't want to distract them, so I have to find a way to automate this. And so he did. And yeah, and then starting with the Violent Sleep of Reason tour, I think is where things like really took off and got like, really super precise. And
yeah, for sure. I mean, I've seen a show of them myself at a festival, and it's true that the experience really changed. Every time I see them, the experience changes. But what I was referring to earlier, and I'd like to have your thoughts on this, is the use of technology in Meshuggah, because they seem to me to have pioneered a lot of things that come later in the mainstream. So right now we're talking about the lights, but also in terms of music, the fact that they used programmed drums in 2005 on Catch 33, and the fact that they pioneered this. I mean, they were probably not the first, but the drum kit from hell, the like MIDI instrument that they used to do the drums, has been used by countless bands before, and the songwriting techniques they've pioneered with that album and the album before are used by tons of bands now, like gen bands, and that enables a new possibilities in writing super complex music. And so yeah, I wonder what you think about that and the way technology shapes music creation.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is that on the most recent album they moved away from this, right? Because they recorded the whole thing live in studio.
Yeah.
Whereas like all these previous albums, they've done the program thing, right? And so one of the things that allowed them is sort of kind of pie in the sky composition, right? And if you watch some of the there's an interview with Thomas Hake from like around when the Kolos album came out, and he's like talking about their process, about so and so comes up with a part for the song, and so whoever starts writing the song, right, then writes all the parts for the other players, right? And then the other players have to come and be like, this actually isn't possible on my instrument. What can we change it to? And so the programming and recording it that way sort of lets them record things that are actually sort of beyond human capability to realistically play. And so prior to Violent Sleep of Reason, their albums are sort of dotted here and there with songs that have never been performed live. Because
like the Devil's Name is Surveillance. Yeah,
and Pineal Gland Optics, right, which is the one, it's a totally fascinating composition and piece of music, and and there are bedroom sort of YouTube musicians that have performed that guitar part, but that's a very different sort of ideal condition than putting a piece like that up on stage.